Gaming Geek here with a painting tutorial for this Shanty tower from Printable Scenery. As you can see here, this is a great little model that I use to showcase my Gloomspite Gits. And if you haven't seen my video on how to quick paint them, go ahead and click here in this corner. But this is a great model, and we're going to be giving this away actually to our Patreon supporters. It's going to be a raffle draw January 2020. So let's go ahead and dive in on how I painted this thing. First off, we spray paint like I always do, using this camouflage dark brown as well as this anvil gray. And I normally like to use Rust-Oleum brand, and for some reason they didn't have it, so I ended up buying this dark brown anyway. But any dark brown is going to work out, and you want to spray paint all of the wooden parts, which is the top platform, the roof, as well as the ladders. And with the gray, you're going to spray paint the base as well as the lower portion of the base dark gray, because those parts are going to be gray, and it'll be easier to go over with a brown on the platform. So I always pick the majority color as the base to spray paint. And now I'm going to go ahead and glue this top on, because there's no reason really to keep them separate, unless for storage solutions you want to keep them separate. But I went ahead and glued mine on. Now I'm going to take this slate gray with my stiff brush and dry brush the entire base with this gray once the glue dries. And so as you can see here, it looks like it's going on a little bit too much contrast, but rub it in after a lot of the paint has come off of the brush, and that will provide just a really nice shade. And I only do one shade, don't have to do a whole lot with gray, as that is more of a background color. Here I'm speeding it up a little bit just to show you that you can get a pretty good amount of color on there with just this lighter gray on top of the dark gray base. So I think this is relatively easy to do. Just make sure you're not caking it on too much once you apply it. And then once I'm done, I go back through some of the spots just to highlight a little bit more some of the raised edges. And at this point, I don't really care if I get it on anything else. Now go ahead and grab your burnt umber. That's the darkest acrylic brown that I have. And I'm just going to use a sable brush to brush it on to all of the wooden parts of the base. And so here it's going to be these cross beams coming across the top, as well as some of the platforms where you're going to have the brown on those as well. And like I mentioned before, because there's so much gray, it's better to go ahead and just spray paint the whole thing gray and then put in the dark brown afterwards. You could do it the other way around, where you're spray painting the entire thing dark brown, but then you'd have a harder time going into the crevices with a dark gray on top of that brown. And that's why I like to do it in this way, where the lesser color, in this case, which is brown, is what I'm painting on after. While we're waiting for that brown to dry, I do go ahead and grab just a couple of bright primary colors, or not primary colors, but here I'm putting on purple, and I just randomly choose some of the crystals, the clusters of crystals, and basically paint them in using, again, a sable brush, watered down quite a bit so that it flows pretty easily. And I picked, for my tower, 3 different colors. It's the purple, this green, and then sort of a turquoise blue. Once that's dry, I go ahead and highlight the corners and the edges. I just add white to these base colors to lighten them up a little bit. And then again, with a wet brush, just go around the edges, and it's relatively easy to do. Just highlight the edges of all of the crystals. And again, I just do one coat of this just to highlight and make it look like that these pieces are crystals. Next, I'm going to be taking this milk chocolate and now dry brushing over all of the brown. And so here I'm doing the platform, and I'm putting on a pretty thick coat. You will have to do 2 coats. So once this is dry, you're gonna wanna go back and do a second coat just to brighten it up a little bit. You can, on the second coat, decide to add a little bit of tan or some white just to lighten it up a little bit if you wanted to do that. I didn't do that. I just did the same color and just went around twice and found that to be sufficient in highlighting and bringing out the brown on all of the wood. And then I also now put a dark gray onto the stones that are on the platform since we spray painted the entire thing brown. And so I'm going to put this dark gray on here first, which is called zinc with Americana craft paints. And then I'm going to go back with the lighter gray and highlight it. And then here I'm just taking some silver and brushing over all of the stuff on the roof, the stovepipes as well as the sheet metal, and just sort of a more dry brush because I want to maintain some of the shadow of the dark brown in the crevices to create a little bit of shading. So that's not too hard to do. Obviously you can use copper if you want rather than silver, or any metal color that you like. And then finally, I'm going to go through with my red and paint all of the mushroom caps, and there are a lot of them. And this is the reason why I didn't want to paint one of the crystal colors red, because I knew I'd have a lot with these mushroom caps. So go through and paint not only all of them on the roof, but also there's a lot on the tower. And then I go back, I don't show this, but I go back with a brush and I dot and put white dots all over the mushrooms. Here I take my antique gold because I'm gonna do the ropes that are around the trusses along the bottom. There aren't a whole lot of them. And again, these are all colors that I use with all of my other buildings. If you haven't seen, I go in a little bit more detail with some of my previous painting videos, but this is the same color palette that I use for everything. If you want to see that, go ahead and click here, and that'll give you a little bit more detail and show you all of the paints that I use. And then finally, here's the result of the painting. It's relatively quick. It's not very difficult to do. And I think it turned out looking really nicely. And my gloom spike gits look awesome on this piece. It really fits the theme for them, especially with all of the mushrooms, which I really love. I think this tower adds a lot to your tabletop or your display case, as I will be doing in showing off my warband from Warcry. And then you can leave the top unglued, the roof, so that you can hide some figures inside if you want to. Also, from printable scenery that I've shown in other videos, I have another piece that I printed out for my goblins, and that is the moon shrine. And all of these are a part of Printable Scenery's most recent Kickstarter that they had, and they have just a lot of cool things. If you're running goblins, I think this is a great set that you can have with them. So here's a close up so that you can see how much it matches my other tower. But that's it. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Please subscribe, and again, we're giving this away, so check out Patreon if you want to get in on that. But thanks so much, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.